Oh snap, you just did a go around? Guess you lost your license. Oh wait, you just took off from that airport? Guess you lost your license. Say bye-bye to it. So, well, there goes the FAA with my license. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, some new rules that just came into effect apparently, or new precedent that was just set. Not new rules, because rules within the FAA actually go to a comment period and we get to weigh in on it as citizens of the United States, kind of like how that whole democracy thing works. But no, what just happened actually, big newsflash if you haven't heard about it, is that now there's precedent set from an administrative law judge from an FAA case that says you cannot go around if you've basically been within 500 feet of a vehicle, vessel, or person or object. Otherwise you'll be violated with that regulation. You're gonna have to land your aircraft, because if you don't land your aircraft, then we're gonna assume you never had an intent to land there. Therefore, you can't do that. Oh, and also they said that a runway is really just what they decide it to be, because the FAA doesn't define a runway in 14 CFR 1.1. They define what an airport is, but not a runway. They just go ahead and said that if there's not any sort of runway markings or a windsock or runway lights, then you must not be landing in a suitable area, and therefore you can't say that you were taking off or landing if you're within 500 feet of a vehicle, vessel, person, or object. Therefore, you're in violation of 91.119 and also 91.13, reckless and careless operation of an aircraft. Therefore, no more license for you. We're going to go ahead and suspend it. Now, where is all this coming from? In case you guys haven't heard, Trent Palmer, very big guy on YouTube, really cool videos on his channel. Go ahead and check him out. Links in the description below. But he had his license suspended for 60 days. Why? Because his buddy called him up and said, hey, I fly RC airplanes in my backyard. I've got this little strip there that I fly RC airplanes off of. You've got an airplane that, well, it's basically the same size as my RC airplanes. It can take off and land in about the same distance. Why don't you go ahead and come in and land here? And not making fun of the Kid Fox, I've got a little Rans here as well. So we fly little airplanes, and yeah, they take off and land in surprisingly short distances. So what do we do when a landowner gives us permission to land on their property? Well, we're legally allowed to land there as precedent set by the FAA. So Trent went ahead and flew over there, and in accordance with the FAA off-airport ops guide, cool little cover page there with the FAA logo, he was in compliance with page 3, where they recommend doing a high-level, intermediate, and low-level pass to inspect the surface which you intend to land on prior to landing on it. Here at the Flight Mike Alpha Pilot Lodge in Big Lake, Alaska, we do a lot of off-airport training, and we teach a 5-step process to our students prior to landing in any off-airport location that typically results in them making 3, 5, sometimes even 10 passes. I've made over 15 passes before over an area in the direction I intend to land, sometimes each direction, inspecting it before actually landing there, making sure it's safe to do so. That's good aeronautical decision making according to the administrator in their publications, and that's what we teach here. Now, Trent went ahead and made a low pass over his buddy's property where he was going to land on that little area where he was flying RC airplanes out of, and said, you know what, I'm not feeling it today, runway conditions, weather conditions, wind, whatever it is, I'm not going to land here. I'm going to make a good decision, good aeronautical decision making, and go around and head on his way and choose not to land there. Now, they violated him with 91.119, which that regulation spelled out for us right here, except when necessary for takeoff or landing, no person may operate an aircraft below the following altitudes anywhere. You gotta be high enough that if the engine quits, you can glide somewhere safely. And then if you're over a congested area, you need to be 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle in that area within 2,000 feet of your aircraft. But if you're over a congested area, there's a good chance you'll have to be even higher than that, because you have to be able to glide to a safe area to land. See, Trent was in a non-congested area. Very common misconception when students come to me for flight reviews, they say, yellow, congested on the sectional chart. Not yellow, not congested. Well, it kind of works this way. The FAA has said before that just because it's not yellow doesn't mean it's not congested. If you have a whole bunch of houses parked in real tight, or maybe there's a big gathering like Burning Man, that becomes a pretty congested area, all right, out in the desert, even though it's not yellow. So common sense applies, but we can definitely say, looking at a satellite photo here of the area Trent was landing in, this is kind of his neighborhood in that area, that it looks pretty uncongested to me. It looks like you could probably drop a Kit Fox, maybe even a 747 in there and get it stopped without hitting any houses, although you'd probably break the landing gear off the 747. But saying it's not congested, right? A Kit Fox is like a kite with a Rotax strapped to the front of it. It lands pretty darn short. Just for reference, down in the corner there on this sat photo, you can see that little strip that's 500 feet long, or a little greater than that. I'm pretty sure Trent would be able to take off and land, well, in way less than half of that in his airplane. So I'd say if his engine quit, even if he was only 100, 200 feet over the ground, he's probably in a good place to make a turn away from a home or any sort of property and not do damage to anything out there or himself or his aircraft. So I'd say he was in compliance with it because it was necessary for him to be that low and that close to the house when he was attempting to land. The problem is the FAA inspector was very misguided, ill-informed, and ignorant, and read this to be, well, that wasn't a necessary landing. Well, what's a necessary landing? It's not defined anywhere because it's what the pilot says it is. There's no such thing as a necessary landing except like emergency landings, when you run out of gas, when the engine's on fire, when you have to actually physically land the aircraft right now. That becomes necessary, right? No one could argue that. Anybody could argue that any other landing, when there's fuel on board and the aircraft's operating okay, that it wasn't necessary for you to land there. You could have gone somewhere else. So that's very arbitrary. We can't have the FAA arbitrarily deciding when we can and cannot take off or land our aircraft. When we decide to take off or land, it's necessary because we decided it to be. Now, an important distinction here is when are you actually breaking this regulation? Because I also see students come in and sometimes with not the best attitude, and they come in and they tell me, oh, it doesn't matter if you fly low or if you buzz over your buddy's house, just tell them you're trying to land there. If it's for takeoff or landing, they can't violate you. Well, that's not the spirit of the rule. But that's not at all what Trent was doing. He was actually attempting to land there, and it was a very non-congested area. Buzzing someone's house is not safe, and you shouldn't be doing it. Now, when can they actually violate you with this, and when should they? Good example of this is in Talkeetna, Alaska. We have this really cool runway there, the Village Strip, right in the heart of downtown. You can land your airplane and walk to downtown within 30 seconds. When you land there, landing to the south, you cross over the Fairview Bar very low and way less than 500 feet above it to make a safe landing there. When you take off to the north, you're gonna fly above the Fairview Bar, probably within 500 feet of it, unless you're able to get high enough to make a turn quickly. Depends on the performance of your aircraft. In my little 85 horse 140, I'm gonna be buzzing that building pretty close. But I would back taxi the full length to be as high as I possibly could be before crossing any sort of buildings. I want as much altitude as I possibly can have if the engine did quit. A not-so-friendly gentleman decided to take his Super Cub and consistently take off and buzz the Fairview Bar. And even when told not to do so by the airport manager and by the FAA, he said, well, basically, screw you, I'm taking off, I can do whatever I want, it says so right here. And they said, after he did this many times and kept disobeying and just perpetually was being unsafe, they said, you know what, you taking off 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way down the runway and then buzzing the bar and barely scraping the roof, it's not necessary for you to do that. You could have back taxied. The runway was usable, it wasn't rutted out or muddy, so you could have used the whole thing and been a lot higher, therefore you're in violation 91 and 119. That's a very appropriate violation. To err is human. Humans make mistakes and sometimes do the wrong thing. Not all pilots are perfect and some pilots need to be violated by the FAA. Trent isn't one of them, especially in this case. Now, to err is human, and the FAA is made up of a lot of humans. The FAA, those humans, those few humans that were involved in this case, erred greatly. The FAA has one main purpose in its existence, and that is to ensure safety in the NAS, the National Airspace System. They need to ensure the safety of the flying public on airlines, the airliners, the pilots themselves, and the airlines. That's what they really care about, and I think they'll openly tell you because the millions of people that use that system, that's where most of their focus is. And they also care about GA pilots, passengers, and all the people that live underneath all these airplanes flying around in the federal airspace, which they regulate. So Trent informed the FAA inspector, hey, I was making an inspection pass in accordance with FAA guidance, and I felt that it was unsafe to land there, so I went around. Therefore, I didn't break a rule. And he said, you know what? We're going to refer this to legal counsel. And the FAA attorney, very misguided, ill-informed, ignorant person, obviously, in this particular subject matter, said, I don't think your landing was necessary. They don't get to choose if it was necessary or not. They don't get to elect when we land and when we don't, or where we land and where we don't. If you have permission from the landowner, it's a well-established precedent that you can land your aircraft there, or on a public use airport, or on public land that is open to aircraft or other vehicles of that nature. So, BLM land, national parks in Alaska, state land in Alaska below the tide line. A lot of land is open to aircraft in the lower 48 and in Alaska, and of course all our public use airports. So, does the FAA define what an airport even is? Well, this administrative law judge tried to say, once it actually went to trial, basically, not a trial with a jury of your peers, like you would normally have in a civil case when there's more than $20 in question, you get to have a trial by jury of your peers as guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, the Constitution of our country. No, that wasn't the case here. They get to take something far greater than $20 in value from Trent, basically by just one guy who works with the FAA, the administrative law judge, to say, yeah, you know what? No, I don't think that was a necessary landing, and because you didn't land there, I don't think you had the intent to land there because you went around and you didn't actually physically land your airplane there. Now, had you landed there, I might feel differently, but you didn't. And Trent's like, well, yeah, because it was unsafe. So he's like, well, you didn't land there, so I don't think you had the intent to. Therefore, you violated 91-119. And furthermore, it's not a safe place to land in the first place because there's no windsock, there's no runway lights, there's no runway markers. Nowhere in anywhere 14 CFR or any part of the federal regulation system, any of the Code of Federal Regulations, any of the laws of the United States, anywhere does it say a runway needs to have a windsock or runway lights or runway markings. The vast majority of FAA airports in this country that receive FAA funding don't have lights. Some of them barely have windsocks. This is an FAA airport that has received FAA funding. It looks terrible to me. Like, that's, you call that a windsock? Okay, there's definitely no lights there and there's no markings. It's just dirt. So, is that an acceptable place to land? When I land there, sometimes I get closer than 500 feet to persons, vehicles, vessels, or objects. If I go to land there and I do a low pass to check it out, make sure it's not too rutted up and there's no moose on the runway and there's no obstacles, and I figure out, oh my gosh, look, somebody dropped some debris off their truck or off their four-wheeler when they went racing through here, I don't want to land here, and then there was a four-wheeler parked off on the side of the runway, guess what? I just broke a regulation, apparently, according to this law judge. So let's ask ourselves, is the FAA upholding their charter, or at least these few individuals within the FAA? Their charter of safety in the NAS, one simple thing, that's all they exist for. Do they exist to enforce regulations? Sure, because that's how they promote and ensure safety in the NAS. Now, is that what they're doing here? So now I have to land there, otherwise I violate 91-119 even though I don't feel it's safe. So you've taken away my authority as pilot in command to exercise my privilege to go around, and the safe decision, the safe option, what I should be doing to actually go around and choose not to land there. You've taken that away from me. So I'd say that's incredibly detrimental to safety in the NAS. It's incredibly opposite of what thousands of FAA employees have been working towards. Thousands of FAA employees go to work every day to promote safety in the NAS, to make it safer every day, every step of the day for the past however many decades of work. And just within one ruling, one simple case, they managed to undo years of that. They've also sown the seeds of distrust between the administrator and the pilot group, which is another detriment to safety in the NAS. Because how can we trust these FAA employees when they are not interpreting the regulations appropriately? How can I trust the FAA employees when I have experiences like being in Oregon, in Bend, Oregon, and someone from the Portland, Oregon FSDO is called a safety inspector, and that safety inspector tells the person calling them, oh yeah, it's illegal to operate a drone within 5 miles of an airport. Well, it happened to be that I was standing next to a sheriff's deputy because the police were called when I was operating a drone at an airport in Class G airspace in accordance with 14 CFR 107 and Advisory Circular 107-2, and that FAA employee, safety inspector, told the sheriff's deputy it's illegal to fly a drone within 5 miles of an airport. He's breaking the law. Yeah, I had a lot of fun that day. Not really. And that is inappropriate for the FAA inspector to say something like that, to misinterpret the rules, and there needs to be accountability when they make mistakes. Error is human, everyone makes mistakes, but there must be accountability and some sort of corrective action taken to ensure it doesn't happen again. This is why I'm really glad this happened to Trent. Not that I would wish this on anybody. Dealing with the FAA is terrible, and Trent's a good person and shouldn't be having to deal with this. I'm glad this happened to Trent because we're all talking about it now. Because Trent has a huge following of 500,000 people, and the sad thing is, Trent isn't the first one that this has happened to, that the rules have been misapplied to. Trent is just the first one we're hearing about because he has a big following. If this had happened to somebody else, you would never know their name. They don't have a YouTube channel. The people that have had this happen to them before don't have a YouTube channel or an Instagram or a Facebook page or all these followers. They didn't have deep pockets to hire attorneys, and some of them may have been in an airline track career or trying to get hired somewhere, and a 60-day suspension on their record could ruin their career, ruin their livelihood, and make their family starve. So is that right? I would say no. Is that promoting safety in the NAS? I would say definitely not. I would like to see a couple things come out of this, and I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch Trent's video. The link's in the description below to get the full backstory on it. But there's a few things at stake here for all of us, besides just Trent. They are our ability to exercise our pilot and command authority to go around and not land somewhere where we feel it is unsafe. Our authority to determine when we want to take off and when we want to land and where we want to do so when it's legal to do so. When we have permission from the landowner, or we're going to be landing on federal land that's open to us, that may not be an established airport. They actually do define what an airport is, the FAA does, in their regulations. An airport means an area of land or water that is used or intended to be used for the landing and takeoff of aircraft, and includes its buildings and facilities, if any. They don't define what a runway is. So if you intend to land somewhere, I guess it's an airport. ICAO does define what a runway is. They say it's simply a rectangular piece of ground that you're planning to operate aircraft on, or that's been designated to operate aircraft on. If that landowner, Trent's buddy, said you can land here, he designated that piece of land for him to land on, and it's open to him, and he's following the rules. So what I would like to see come of this, and what's at stake, our ability to exercise our privileges to go around, our ability to land where we so choose to at a time when we so choose to, when we decide it's necessary to take off or land, and our ability to utilize public land or any land to land on, beaches, places that we are able to access, gravel bars, our backyard here in Alaska. I don't have runway markings on my runway in my backyard. I just land there, and it's actually, for the longest time, was not an FAA airport, and now it's a private registered FAA airport. Does that make a difference in this ALJ's mind? But more importantly, we can't fix the wrongs that have been done to all the people we don't know about from years past that we know the FAA has taken advantage of in these cases. I've experienced it personally in that case in Oregon and other places in the country when the FAA has made mistakes and misapplied the rules. I would like to see change within the FAA, and it's going to have to come from us, the people, you, the person watching this video. AOPA and EAA can do a lot, and I'm talking to you, AOPA, EAA, RAF, the rest of the alphabet right now. You have where I live. You know me. I'm a member with you guys, all of those organizations, and I would like to see an email in my inbox from you soon that has the contact information for my congressmen and my senators, and also not just their email, but their phone numbers, perhaps their mailing address, and a nice form letter that I can sign my name to and email them, a letter I could go ahead and print out, sign my name to, and mail them, and also some talking points if I call them and leave a voice message to make my voice heard. Because although the lobbyists and the people working on the government affairs side of AOPA, EAA, and all those other agencies are great, 400,000, 500,000 voices are a lot stronger than just those organizations. And we need to make our voice heard. That's how a representative democracy works. That's how the FAA exists in the first place. That's how all these rules exist in the first place. We chose them, we the people. And it's not okay for an individual within that agency that our representatives delegated authority to, the FAA. It's not okay for an individual or just a small group of individuals to apply the rules as they see fit and exercise their opinions and interject their opinions into law. That's not how our country works. And it's a much bigger issue than just Trent or aviation in general. Anytime a government official oversteps, we have to hold them to account, and we have to make sure we have systems and checks and balances in place that work to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. I would like to hear your ideas in the comments below, both on if you think Trent was doing anything wrong, because I don't think he was, and also what system could we come up with? How could we hold these FAA employees to account? What can I do about the guy who made my life a nightmare with the Bend police because he opened his mouth and said, I'm an FAA inspector, I'm an agent of the FAA, I have a badge, and that guy's breaking the law, and he was dead wrong. What can we do about that? How can we prevent it from happening in the future? How can we hold these people accountable in Trent's case? And if they're really ignorant and misapplying the regulations, how can we remove them from their positions? How can we give them remedial training, just as they would do to a pilot, and 709 them and see if they actually should hold the position that they do? How can we ensure that this doesn't happen to other people who don't have YouTube channels, don't have deep pockets for attorneys, didn't sign up for the AOPA legal plan, which is a good thing to sign up for, by the way. I can say that the AOPA legal plan won't help you in every case. I've reached out to them twice now, being a member of it, and both times they denied me, saying that both cases were outside the scope of the legal plan, yet I do still recommend it for anyone out there, and I would check it out, even though it didn't help me twice. Still a little frustrated over that. Anyways, back to this. There's a 3-step process here to ensure that we can make real progress here. Have those organizations, AOPA, EAA, RAF, so on, put us in contact, help us with our busy lives. Give us the contact information for the representatives we need to talk to. Give us the talking points so we can sound intelligent and speak specifically to the rules and regulations that need to be enforced or rewritten or enacted to hold the FAA accountable and ensure they cannot overreach and affect us as law-abiding citizens. And then take the action. Contact those representatives. Third, exercise your rights. Because if all of us don't land off airport or backcountry aviation slows down in any way, the less we do it, the easier it is for someone to erase it from history. If none of us landed off airport for an entire year and we only stuck to paved runways, and then one person did it a year later, they would say, that's ridiculous because no one's doing that. That's not normal. That's not reasonable. And what always is the presiding law in our country, in any case, criminal or civil, is the reasonable man metric. And in this case, it's the reasonable pilot metric. What would a reasonable pilot do? And a reasonable pilot, when landing somewhere that they had permission to land or attempting to, would make a low pass first. And then if they decide it's not safe, they would add power and go around and go on their way, or perhaps keep trying to see if there's a different approach that they could use. But they would exercise their privilege and their good aeronautical decision making and not force themselves to land somewhere that they know is unsafe just because they made that first pass. It's our freedom to fly. We have to protect it. We have to stand up and use it. And I do want to make something very clear. There's individuals within the FAA that are misapplying the rules. There's individuals within the FAA that I've had negative interactions with in Florida, Texas, Oregon, Pennsylvania. But by and large, my interactions with hundreds of people across the FAA over the years have been incredibly positive. And of the thousands of employees in the FAA, I'd say many thousands of them, 99.9%, are working diligently every single day to ensure safety in the NAS. I can give you a good example of it when it works, because all my interactions with the FAA here in Alaska have been incredibly positive. We have a 135 certificate that we do charter flying on here as part of our company here at Flight Mike Alpha. So we offer charter flights with a 206. We were putting a 206 aircraft through conformity. The FAA came out to inspect it. Our FAA inspector said, I think that that instrument isn't right or needs to be replaced. I said, I disagree. He said, I'm going to go home and do research and I will get back to you. And if I can prove that you actually do need a tachometer with tach time on it, not just a regular PMA tachometer that shows RPM, but something that shows tach time, if I can prove that you need that, then you'll have to replace that. If I can't prove it to you on paper, then we err on your side. You say you don't need it, so then you don't need it. And that's how it should be. And he went home and did his research, and we were able to have a constructive conversation to both work together to comply with the regulations the way they are written. Not the way I thought they ought to be, or the way he thought they ought to be. The way they were written by all of us collectively. And that's what we complied with on our 135. That's what I comply with every day. And that's what 99% of the FAA enforces on a daily basis. These few cases can be incredibly detrimental, though, to safety in the NAS, incredibly detrimental to people's livelihoods, and those individuals need to be addressed and held to account. We have to do that, and I'm asking for your help to do it. AOPA, EAA, and you, the person watching this video. Not just to help Trent, to help all of us protect our freedom in aviation and outside of aviation. If you don't use it, you will lose it, and I don't want to lose it. And together, we won't. Now, to the FAA, if you're looking for any evidence to use against me, please enjoy the next few minutes of go-arounds where I did not feel safe landing in a particular situation for a number of reasons. If you cannot fly every day, fly at MikeAlpha.com. We will see you guys in the next one.